Hey everybody, how's it going? My name is Thur. Welcome everybody to Final Fantasy XIV video. In today's video, we're going to be making a criticism as well as a response video to Brian from Work to Game, a good friend of mine that I've done many streams with in the past, and I've actually been on their live show before for many of times. I'm going to be with them over on Wednesday as well, and hopefully, as long as they don't take offense to this particular video, we can maybe have a little bit of a discussion regarding Final Fantasy XIV together on their show. Regardless, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the main point for the video. My main point is to do a video response to Brian from Work to Game on his video titled, Why is Final Fantasy XIV Dying? I believe that Final Fantasy XIV personally is not dying, but I would like to go bit by bit and still make criticisms where they are due on the game. I don't see Final Fantasy XIV as a perfect game, nor do I think Square Enix deserves all the praise that it's been getting as of recent. It's still a good company, but it still has its own downfalls that I do want to criticize. Regardless, let's go ahead and break the video down little by little. I'll offer my points of view, and please understand that this is not me grilling out Brian. I just want to be able to discuss his points of view and discuss his points on Square Enix and Final Fantasy XIV and be able to respond with it, as well as add on some of my own personal thoughts. This is a video response that you haven't seen on YouTube in a while. People haven't been really doing responses because people are less likely to communicate. So therefore, I would like to make this video for today. Let's give it a try.
With over 5 years experience behind its rebirth and with each expansion and patch, this game feels more and more thin. And it's with looking at this game and talking with the community, I reluctantly make this video to try and answer the question, why is Final Fantasy XIV dying?
I believe that in this context, it has to be defined on what you mean by a game is dying, right? If, let's say, for example, you mean that there is less things to do, you're not inspired to do it, maybe it could be a personal burnout. If, let's say, for example, you feel like there's less content to do in the game right now at the moment, that is irrelevant. That is because you've already grinded out the patch as is. You've already done everything for the current patch. You're waiting for the new patch, which coincidentally we do have patch 4.4 right around the corner. And the patch is going to bring in a lot more stuff for us to do, a lot more activities, new raid, new trial, new things for the canals, a lot of quality of life stuff that we're looking forward to, and I think many players are excited for. If you mean by there's an ebb and flow of things to do, that is a normal thing for an MMO. Usually there's something to do at the beginning of the patch, then by the end of the patch, you kind of get burnt out, you kind of want something new because everything becomes stale. You've already outdone everything. And maybe certain parts of the patch weren't that attractive to you and you want to just go ahead and go past it and not worry about it. This is the important part that we need to define here. What do we mean by the game is dying? I don't believe the Final Fantasy XIV is dying. If you really look at Steam charts, and before I tell you, Steam charts only pulls data from Steam users alone, so this is not a 100% representation, just a reference for us to use. But if you look at the MMOs from Steam charts, when you compare Final Fantasy XIV to other MMOs, games like WildStar, games like Rift, games like Star Trek, games like Bless Online, games like Terra, games like Elder Scrolls Online, games like The Secret World Legends, every MMO that is possibly available on Steam right now, if you compare the numbers of what is a healthy MMO, what is not a healthy MMO by a player count alone, considering that Final Fantasy XIV can be gotten from other platforms outside of Steam, but still, if you compare it to all the other MMOs, it's still at a very healthy medium. Now, obviously, there is a huge context that I need to put, a huge asterisk, if you will, regarding Final Fantasy XIV Steam numbers. Many users recommend that you get Final Fantasy XIV outside of Steam, so the number could be exponentially bigger. But if you compare just the Steam numbers alone, even just going by the Steam number standard, Final Fantasy XIV, when in comparison to the other MMOs, is doing rather well. And I believe the biggest deterrent that other players offer to new players and streamers and YouTubers offer to new players regarding purchasing Final Fantasy XIV on PC through Steam or standalone is because the Steam version limits you in your upgradability of the game and which versions you have to use. If you get the game through Steam, and I can tell right now since I have Final Fantasy XIV through Steam, if, let's say for example, I decided to start a new Steam account and I bought myself Final Fantasy XIV base game, If I saw, let's say, for example, a good sale on Heaven's Ward and Stormblood, the expansions, right? That is a bundle together to upgrade my base game to the expansion, to the expansions over on the Square Enix store, I would not be able to use it because my version of the game is already locked behind Steam. The only way for me to upgrade my Steam version of the game, the base game, into the expansion versions is if I purchase it through Steam or entered or purchased a Steam code. It gets a little bit confusing, it gets a little convoluted, and you're probably wondering, wait, Thur, why can't I just purchase the game through the Square Enix store, even if I bought it through Steam, and just activate it online? Because your version is locked behind Steam, so you have to make sure everything that is purchased from Steam has to stay to be purchased through Steam. You can't benefit from the sales that Square Enix store may have or Amazon may have, so you lock behind it. So it's a major deterrent for players to encourage other new players to not get their game through Steam. I'm locked behind Steam and I'm okay with missing out on the sales. It sucks, but it is what it is. But this is one of the biggest reasons why people deter people from purchasing it through Steam, which is why Steam numbers may be kind of low compared to Elder Scrolls Online or Black Desert. With that said, I am willing to listen into the claims that you make regarding why you think the game is dying in particular. I don't believe the game is dying. Just want to clarify, I do not believe the game is dying. I don't think Final Fantasy XIV is even close to dead. In fact, I think it's just going through its ebb and flow where it has a very low activity because there's nothing to do with the patch. Once 4.4 comes out and people are raiding, people are doing the trial, and they're doing all the other activities that 4.4 brings in, then it's going to get active again. Then we're going to have a lot to do. And you know what's going to happen at the end of 4.4? We're again going to feel like there's nothing to do until the new patch is out or until they tease a new expansion.
I think that with all critiques, it's usually best to start by praising the game for all that it does right and all that I love about it. Plus, I find that it helps for anyone seeing this video's thumbnail and title. While not watching the first minute of this video and jumping to accuse me of not being a fan of this game or that I'm attacking this game needlessly.
I genuinely believe personally myself as a person, not as a content creator, not as a personality, but as a person, as Thur, as me, I believe everything and anything deserves to be criticized if a person wills to, wants to criticize it. My channel, me, myself as a content creator, me, myself as a person, people should be able to criticize me. People should be able to criticize Brian, his channel, Chris, and people should be able to criticize Final Fantasy XIV and Square Enix and the game industry as a whole and the MMO market as a whole. I think there's nothing wrong with criticizing because that creates a discussion. And as long as the discussion doesn't go, full toxic, it can actually be very productive and breakthroughs can be made. Now, your title and thumbnail clearly look like they want to, provoke an idea, provoke a discussion, provoke a response, and there's nothing wrong with that. Whatever your hustle is whatever your hustle. Maybe you have some sort of a creative idea regarding it and you have some sort of a vision for the titling and the video production of the video. Nothing's wrong with that. I would never criticize someone's use of even clickbait, as long as it gets the point across and as long as it gets you the ability to make a productive discussion video, that's perfectly fine. What is a little bit concerning for me is like and a dislike bar currently on your video, which has a pretty down the middle, a little bit more towards the dislike, a little bit less on a likes ratio. It's not a huge disparity. It's not like you have full bar that just dislikes. But this sort of thing makes me wonder if the video was good over the points or were factual and valid. I want to give the benefit of the doubt that most viewers, when they're watching a video, they don't just like or dislike immediately when the video begins just because of the title and the thumbnail. There's a percentage of people who do it, but they're more in the fringe minority. If the video is good and has valid points and you have a valid argument, people will watch it all the way to the end. And even if they disagree with you, I feel like the majority of people watching the video would still leave a like if the video alone was good and if the points alone were good. Sadly, however, it looks like only it's like half and half, so it makes me a little bit wonder about the hot takes that you got going on, and if they were really valid and, if they even deserve that much dislikes on the video. I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead a little bit more towards this video to get to the actual points. He pretty much says that he loves Final Fantasy XIV, and let me be the first one to vouch for Brian. Brian and Chris really do indeed like Final Fantasy XIV, and Brian in particular, he loves Final Fantasy XIV. He wants nothing but the best for the game, and what he is trying to do is just criticize certain aspects that he would like to see be improved upon. Anyway, let's go ahead and begin.
I've tried to weigh and measure my disappointment in Stormblood and ask myself some critical questions, like am I just burned out of the game right now? This is perfectly acceptable and natural when you play a game for so long. But when I look at it, I just haven't found the interest in logging in and capping out my tomes, running dailies, and it all boils down to the main disappointment that I feel. I've done all of this before, and I've been doing it for the last 5 years. And while each patch of Stormblood has added new content and new quality of life adjustments and more, I just keep on waiting and hoping for more.
I'm gonna start trying to make these things a little bit short because this is like the 7th time I'm recording myself. Feels like I'm doing some sort of an essay response with like a full paragraph and 7-page paper. Yeah, Brian, I definitely believe that this is a burnout that you're experiencing, and I feel like a lot of us are experiencing a burnout of Final Fantasy XIV, mostly because there's nothing relevant to do in the current patch. But hey, that's gonna change in a new patch. In the meantime, I see Mr. Happy playing some Final Fantasy XI. I see Sky taking on some Shin Megami Tensei games. I see a lot of people doing other stuff, a lot of content creators and streamers that are primarily streaming Final Fantasy XIV, exploring other games. Me in particular, I'm doing VR chat, already plugged it before, you know the link to that, link in the description below if you want to check that out. In regards to the formulaic aspect and the formulaic section of Final Fantasy XIV, I will agree, Final Fantasy XIV's endgame for every patch is very formulaic. Every single major patch is always going to be a story piece that's going to leave with a cool cliffhanger. It's going to be the shining moment of it all, the story, the next part of like, whoa, what's going to happen next, off and on stuff. It's going to be so hyped. We're always going to have a raid tier. We're always going to have new set of tomes that we got to cap out. We're always going to have a new trial. We're always going to have 2 new dungeons, 1 story dungeon and 1 hard mode dungeon of a previous tier. We're always going to have some quality of life stuff added to us. It's very formulaic, but because formulaic works, I would love to hear what you actually wanted to see in regards to changing things up. Would you like to see 2 raids added compared to 1 raid tier? Would you like to see maybe raids be split up into 2 separate halves to be like micro raids? Would you like to see maybe a different sort of dungeon that completely flips the table? I would like to see it as well, but I mean, I would also like to see, I would like to hear what you think about it. What kind of things you would like to see. At the moment, Square Enix is only going with the current formula because it works. It brings in the content. But I am interested in what kind of things you would like to see yourself.
Looking for some reason that really pulls me in and holds my attention. This, for all that Stormblood as an expansion did to improve the game, has only met with what I would call as a carbon copy of Heavensward. And with that copy, content being removed from the game. We went from 3 jobs to 2 jobs. We didn't even get another race. And that's actually not the core of my complaint, but when I start to compare the 2 games, Stormblood just feels visibly weaker.
Would adding a tank and a healer and a DPS per patch not make it even more formulaic for Final Fantasy XIV than it already is though? I mean, if your argument is that Final Fantasy XIV is too formulaic, why not just flip the script and try something new, try something different? That's probably what they were trying to actually do with Stormblood by introducing more of DPS jobs, because there was maybe a particular reason for it. I currently have an article right now available for me right here from Twin Infinite, which I will link in the description below, but I'll pull up the text. They did an interview with Naoki Yoshida. The question was, some players were upset there wouldn't be any new tank or healer job with the launch of Stormblood. What would you say to these players to make them feel more at ease? I mentioned this on stream on several occasions before. Looking at the data all throughout the 3.0 series, people who have been playing as a tank or a healer whenever a new expansion is introduced, they will first try to level the main job. And we did introduce the Dark Knight and Astrologian as a tank and healer respectively. The player population didn't seem to change too drastically. In terms of having the different jobs with each different role, we have 3 jobs for the tanks, 3 jobs for the healer. Maintaining the balance and even having all these jobs was an extreme difficult challenge for the development team to go through. And I'm sure people who do prefer to play tank or healer had a lot of stress going through it trying to keep up with the battle. We felt that we didn't want to add a tank or a healer just so that matching times would be alleviated and risk having an imbalance happen and adding more stress to people who do like to play as tank or healer. If you want to grow the player base, and primary way statistically to grow the player base according to their findings is to add more DPS, why not experiment with adding 2 new DPS for this expansion instead of the formulaic 1 tank, 1 healer, 1 DPS? If anything, I think Brian would actually commend Final Fantasy, and Yunoki Ishida and Square Enix for doing something like that. I'm pretty sure there was no background board meeting where they said, okay, we cannot spend so much money on Square Enix and cannot spend so much money on Final Fantasy 14. Let's only make 2 jobs this time. You can only make 2 jobs. No, they found the findings that the player base grows when there's a DPS added. When it comes to a new tank or a healer added, the people that are only interested in tanking and healing, they would just kind of split off and kind of play the other tank and the other healer. Primarily, people wanted just DPS. That's their findings, and I think it's actually pretty accurate. Tanking and healing is a very stressful job in any MMO out there, so primarily if people want to come in as a DPS and just DPS, if that's easier for them, makes them feel more comfortable, then I think people would rather choose the more comfortable, easier, more fun option. Not many people will find tanking or healing fun. Some will, for sure. There's definitely an argument that can be made that tanking and healing is indeed fun, but it's also pretty stressful. It comes with its own responsibilities.
When I look at Stormblood and where we were this time when Heavensward, I ask, where is all the content? And to be fair, I have expectations for this game, and perhaps those expectations are wrong. Perhaps I'm wrong. But when we hear from Yoshi P and the majority of people talk about this game focusing on housing and glamour, both fine and good things to have in this game, I grow ever bored of what they offer in terms of content.
I think personally myself that Final Fantasy 14, and especially Yoshi P, has done really well to make sure that everything is catered to as best as possible. I do not believe that majority of players are Savage endgame content raiders and ultimate raiders whatsoever. They maybe dabbled a little bit in Savage, they maybe tried the raids a little bit, but primarily the majority of the player base is casual. And if casual players prefer housing stuff and fashion stuff, then I would think that Yoshi P would want to understand and acknowledge that player base of casual players that are more interested in the aesthetical aspects of Final Fantasy XIV and want to cater to them a little bit. God, my voice is dying halfway through the video. You can hear it in my voice, can't you? But anyway, my point is, if they are catering to the casuals, then they are catering to the casuals. They're the biggest player count that they have for the game, and they're the ones that help fund all the new content that we get. I feel like Final Fantasy XIV actually does really well in making sure that you introduce stuff for Savage. Maybe not in the newest live letter. For the live letter teasing 4.4, they didn't have a trailer ready, they didn't have much of to show for what kind of bosses we're gonna have. They probably only had one boss that was 100% fully ready, or maybe they didn't want to show off every boss, they wanted to tease us a little bit more with the trailer before revealing everything to us. They didn't want to show that because they didn't want to spoil it. However, when they talked about mannequins and some of the fashion aspects of the game and housing aspects of the game, I feel like that's because they had that ready and I wanted to make sure they can explain it so that there's no confusion at release and to be able to make sure that players understand that sort of thing. And like I said before, if you feel like you're getting burnt out from the content, then maybe you're just getting burnt out. Maybe you want to take on different avenues. Go play World of Warcraft for a little bit. Go play Elder Scrolls Online. Revisit some of the games you purchased through Steam Summer Sale or other games that you've been interested in. Maybe stream them for a little bit and check them out. Maybe Destiny's new DLC might be something of interest to you. Maybe you might want to get back into that and see if Destiny has changed its formula a bit. Changing things up is pretty good, especially if you've been playing the same game over and over and over again. Burnout is expected to happen.
Objection! But you're not running Savage content. You're not doing Eureka. You're not doing content A, B, C, D, X, Y, and Z. This is something that I've looked at and proposed my own ideas on what I would like to see them expand on. You can check out those videos via my State of Final Fantasy XIV playlist and let me know your thoughts there. But I do find this objection for the most part grounded and true. I am not doing this type of content. The reasons for me not doing this are varied with various life events that have happened over the past year. So I do think this could be a factor in my personal disappointment, but not for the rest of the community who finds this game lacking. I do want to say it's completely reasonable to be disappointed in a game that you haven't cleared 100% of the title. And also, a player doesn't need to be interested in all parts of the game to be able to be disappointed with the parts they are interested in.
I agree with them. I actually do agree. At this point, is actually very valid. If you have tried raiding, if you have tried PvP, and you don't find it that interesting, and let's say, for example, you only like housing and fashion in Final Fantasy XIV, and even at certain patches, you find it really stale, really boring, nothing new's coming up, and just a bunch of cash shop items being added instead of actually being added in-game that you can craft or get from raids or something, then understandably, yeah, you might want to take a break from the game. You're just experiencing a burnout as long as you're not interested in other parts of the content. If, let's say, for example, you never tried Savage, you never tried PvP, try it before you knock it. And if you generally don't like it, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with disliking something. Now, I want to clarify that. There's nothing wrong with disliking something. Don't let other people tell you otherwise. If you just don't like something because it's not your type, not your cup of tea, not your forte, nothing wrong with that. However, if that certain thing happens, and if, let's say, for example, you're in the same state that Brian is in, where you feel a burnout of the content that that you are interested in, and don't care for the stuff that you're not interested in, why not just step away for a little bit? It feels like, Brian, you're experiencing burnout. Back when I played World of Warcraft, I experienced burnout severely in Worlds of Draenor. It was disappointing. And right now, I'm trying out World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth expansion, and I'm having a pretty good time. I'm not having the same sort of experience and mind-blowing moments that I had back in World of Warcraft, back in Kata days or Pandaria days or anything like that. I'm not having like the time of my life, but I'm enjoying my experience of World of Warcraft right now. Battle for Azeroth so far starting off like a pretty solid expansion. And that's what I've been getting interested in. So I may make videos and streams of it later, possibly. But at the moment, right now, Final Fantasy XIV is not feeding my itch. So I'm trying out World of Warcraft. There's nothing wrong with stepping away from something for a little bit, letting it, change over time, and then come back to see if it's any good, see if you like it.
So that objection aside, here is why I think Final Fantasy XIV is dying. Number 5. The open world zones are big and beautiful, and once you're done with them, there is no reason to spend any time there. Eventually, they're going to add in beast tribes. So if we take this carbon copy into 5.0, these great beautiful worlds, and then point 1 you get a beast tribe, point 2 you get a beast tribe, point 3 you get a beast tribe, point 4 maybe something, we don't know, but those seem to be the only real reasons of going out into the world. And this fundamentally ties into some of these other objections, and I think something that is rotten at the core of the game, and it's that we let all of this content sit by the wayside.
I gotta agree, we kind of do leave a lot of these pretty areas and beautiful zones kind of left out on the side. The only reason we really come back for them is to go gather. And gathering is what we need to do in order to harvest the materials for us to craft, in order to level up crafters and be able to make some really good materials. There is the hunts for the B rank, A rank, and S ranks that we can do that people still find them pretty popular. And if you also go do the fates around the areas in order to level up our ults, in order to have a faster avenue of leveling once we completely expanded through the main story quest line and a lot of the side quests to in order to level ults. But aside from that, we don't have a big reason to come back to the open world. Like, adding things like Beast Tribe gives us a reason to come back to it and stuff, and before we have something close to representing the Palace of the Dead, we go through and spam the fates in the areas. It'll be great to see some more of it to be added, I guess, for endgame. Maybe have like endgame fates, or be participating in fates as an endgame player at max level, at level 70, can give you some good drops, or can give you some really rare drops that could be valuable on the market board, or will be really important. Maybe even give you a chance to get a piece of gear that's slightly above the baseline gear that you get when you first max out. That'd be kind of cool, a way for people to max out gear, not max out gear, but at least be able to gear themselves a little bit ahead of the curve outside of just running dungeons the whole time. I don't know. Be able to repurpose the open worlds. Kind of similar to World of Warcraft is doing right now with BFAs, emissaries, and doing world open quests and stuff. That'd be kind of cool to see.
Number 4, systems that have gone untouched, unloved for whole expansion cycles and more. I'm looking at you, Grand and Free companies. There seems to be this overarching world and things that we would love to tie into and do, and yet they're piecemealed, unloved. And I've talked about this at length of where I would love to see them take these different systems, giving them updates, updating the hunts, updating all of these things. Number 3, the companion app.
Wait. Okay. Hold on. Time out. Hold on. So, Brian, please don't take offense to this, but I'm very, very confused about what you're trying to get through here. So you saying is you're making a hot take, a hot claim that the free companies are not updated, or not the free companies, the grand companies haven't been updated in a while. The hunts haven't been updated in a while, and it's time for us to have a change. All right, you had me on board, but you gotta follow it up with how to change them. You said you talked about this sort of stuff before, and I try to go through a description of your video of right then and there. The only video that it links me to is improvement on the PvE season, as in like making it so that it's like a Diablo-like season for PvE stuff, for progression and everything. And while I think that's a pretty good idea, it doesn't really talk about how to update the hunts and how to update grand companies. If you have a video, please go ahead and link it out and stuff. I would love to see it, but I follow a lot of people, and as of recent, I've been watching more VR chat people than I have been watching anybody else from Final Fantasy XIV doing content, unfortunately. Just kind of being preoccupied with a whole different crowd in particular, I guess you could say. But unless you're willing to, link the videos where you talked about this sort of stuff extensively, I would love for you to at least say, a general idea of how to improve them. You could even say as simple as like, well, I would like to see grand companies have this set up and that set up. And I feel like grand companies have been set up in a little bit nicer ways and a little bit expanded a little bit more on compared to what they were before Stormblood through Squadrons. And even then, Squadrons was more of a Heaven's Ward idea in particular. Still, I feel like the grand companies are being improved on, and even in the current patch 4.4, the upcoming patch of 4.4, they're going to be coming up pretty soon with more content for us to do regarding grand companies. We're going to have a lot more stuff to do regarding grand companies. The hunts could probably be improved, but I would like to hear your thoughts on how they could be improved. If you just say, I would like to see this particular feature improved, people are going to be like, okay, well, how do you want to see it improved? You can't just, go off to another hot take and bring up another third point without without leaving me hanging.
Number 3, the companion app. This tells me that either something is broken in the code or something is broken in the company. It feels like a massive cash grab, not in tune with the day-and-day players of this game. In the end, it feels wrong, and I hope they fix it, but for the most part, it was a huge letdown.
And again, what about the app in particular was a huge letdown? I'm not trying to grill you or anything. I just generally want you to expand on your thoughts, Brian. I want to know what's inside of Brian from work to game regarding the application. You want to know what I think about the app? I think it was a disappointment in particular, but not because it's just bad. There are some things about the application which is fine, which I would love to see possibly be even put into the base game. For example, the ability to make events, the ability to queue in for the events, and even when you choose, let's say for example, you make an event for raiding, you can opt in to be a specific job and have a specific role and stuff. That's kind of cool, and that's something that I would love to see in the game. Some sort of a calendar and event planning feature. Just be baseline in the game to complement what the game already does in particular, instead of using the Google Calendar or the Windows Calendar that I have right now. The application itself is lacking on the real features. Aside from that, I mean, even in the chat function, you can't even chat with people from your free company, or you can't even chat with people from your link shell. You just chat with other people who also have the application. So you all have to get the app in order to be able to communicate, instead of being able to just get on the app and DM people that are currently live right now in game, which is kind of unfortunate. And I wish that they had the ability to contact free company members and link shell members. That'd be cool. Ability to be able to remotely contact people. I mean, lore-wise, we have link shells. This could be like a real-world link shell that we could use, so to speak. But aside from that, I think the application wasn't geared to a regular player, to an everyday player. I mean, the thing only has like 10,000 downloads total right now on Google Store. I generally think the application was primarily marketed for the average Japanese player, the kind of player that works crazy hours and long hours and just wants to be able to micromanage some things in their inventory and be able to do all the mundane stuff while they're on the way to work or the way from home, or they're all the way home and maybe at work taking a break, just be able to micromanage some things here and there. I don't think it was designed for the Western public nor for a regular player, general player. It was designed for a particular niche player that probably only has 2 or 3 hours to clock in a night for Final Fantasy XIV, and wants to do some micromanagement stuff, some different inventory resorting and stuff like that for the inventory, for the saddlebags, and put up stuff on market board. I don't think this application was well thought out, but it doesn't mean that it hasn't been thought out for a particular audience. Maybe you're just not a member of the audience. I'm not going to download the app because I don't need it. I would hardly even find a use for it, nor would I want to even dabble with downloading anything more on my phone. But I'm not going to say that I can't say uses for it, just very, 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 very niche uses for it. Very niche uses for a particular type of audience.
Number 2. The theme park that this game tries to be is all walled off from one another. Each attraction feeds into the only one type of progression system that we have. And while it has introduced other progression systems, they are walled off and separate. A player once hitting all jobs at cap has no reason for XP and no reason to run a roulette and no reason to care. So why build these type of static systems in 2018? And finally, number 1.
Whoa, time out, Brian, time out. Okay, look, I don't want to sound like I'm grilling you or anything, but you can't just be like, the systems, complementing other systems, and there's no reason to use systems, and then move on. That leaves me so many questions. I just want to make sure that I don't have like a pro word to game bias or an anti word to game bias. I love you, Brian and Chris. Y'all are great. The stuff that you do inspires me to do better. It inspires me to actually get back and making content. But like, you can't just give me a hot take of the systems and not go into depth what you mean. At least link me a video that I can watch below. I look through. There's still that video of the seasons, PvE seasons, and while that's a good idea and I've liked that idea, I don't know what you mean by the systems in particular. You have to be a little bit more detailed, because when you say systems on top of systems, it just leaves me confused. We can, however, talk about the things that I do understand about players that have everything maxed out don't have a reason to level. World of Warcraft solved it through having players work towards earning AP, Azerite points, and be able to level up their necklaces that way. Maybe we could have a system like that in the next expansion, possibly. That'd be kind of cool. Or a way for us to level elemental experience, I'm guessing. But I don't know if we could level elemental experience outside of Eureka. People wouldn't be going into Eureka in particular, if that's what you mean. Regarding tomestones, there's always a reason to get tomestones, because tomestones allow us to get better gear, which will let us get into the next raid cycle. If you mean like if there could be more novelties we can get with tomestones, like creation and poetry and stuff like that, or poetics, or mendacity is going to be the next tier that's going to be below the next upcoming tier, that'd be kind of cool. Maybe have like a cap expands on mendacity for the next patch, where we could cap out 50k and then spend the 50k on a mount or something. That'd be kind of cool, but unless you tell me what you mean exactly 100% what you want to have to do with those systems, I can't fill in the blanks for you, my man. You have to tell me. If I fill in the blanks, that makes it unfair, because I'm just assuming what you mean. I don't want to assume what you mean. I want to understand what you mean and be able to respond to it directly. And when you leave me with a lot of vague quotes like that, it just leaves me confused and hanging. Like, I don't know. I want to believe on Brian, but like, I need to understand what Brian means. And it's kind of hard to understand when you don't back up and explain what you mean. I'm sorry if that's me grilling you, but I'm genuinely confused, my man. I'm genuinely confused. And that quote where you said, why can't we have this in 2018? I'm pretty sure that's a logical fallacy. Fallacy naming the current year or century. Regardless of whether I agree with your point or not, I don't think stating the current year or is a point to the fact that a time period has passed provides any basis for the supporting of your argument. If let's say, for example, said that, hey, this other game did this and that worked really well, can we have that in Final Fantasy XIV? That's fine, but you can't just say it's the current year. Just because a time passed or just because it's the current year doesn't mean that your point is any correct in particular. It's just a really bad argument.
The single-minded progression system at its core is one of the great issues I have ultimately landed on while playing this game. Tying into the walled-off theme park approach, content is created and abandoned quickly and with prejudice, because it offers no true reward to one system or another. This is where we need Square Enix to take risks and allow this kind of idea to expand.
The next couple of ideas kind of come up in a rapid fire scenario, so I'm going to try to do a rapid fire response to try to make video. The video is already way too long, so I'm going to try to just narrow down my responses to be quick and concise as best as I can.
If I as a player want to do X, It should ultimately feed in together, whether it's a currency type exchange system or something bigger and broader. Why are poetics only used for anything level 60 and below?
Because it's all tier gear that is not relevant to the current expansion, and because we're moving on to the next expansion where we have to use higher tier tomestones, and poetics only allowed there, they're only there for us to get the old tier gear, either to get some leveling gear for leveling jobs or for the sake of glamour and fashion.
Why isn't there some small currency conversion so that they have value to my overall enjoyment of the game as a whole? It doesn't slow me down, it just converts that type of progression.
Because we're supposed to be earning the endgame tomestones from doing endgame stuff. If the poetics are kind of a throwaway currency, to be completely honest, they're not supposed to be something that we earn for endgame things. We're supposed to run endgame content for endgame currency to get endgame rewards. We can run roulettes and get maybe like a roulette for a trial or an alliance raid, and we'll get some poetics, we'll get some mendacity, we'll get some whatever comes after mendacity, but the ideal point is to run endgame stuff for endgame rewards. Poetics are kind of a throwaway currency and kind of works with the current formula that Final Fantasy XIV has. If you generally don't like the formula, then maybe you're getting burned out from the game.
Why can't I run dungeons and advance in Eureka? It doesn't need to be as advanced as Eureka. Eureka could be the most obviously optimal way of doing it. But as a player, if I want to run a roulette, I have to make that choice. And because everything still fundamentally funnels into the one gear progression system that this game has used for the last 5 years, at the end of the day, it just seems like, why not? What's the big deal? If I got 1/100, elemental experience by running a dungeon, who ultimately cares? I'm not running that dungeon to outpace somebody in Eureka, but I shouldn't have to make that choice and that sacrifice to what works for my time schedule.
On the topic of who would care, probably Square would care. Otherwise, Square would make it so that we can go and get experience, elemental experience in dungeons. And maybe it's supposed to be incremental, but the point is the developers are trying to push us to do the new content. If they could just say like, hey, you don't have to do the new content, but you can still benefit by running 100 dungeons, 1,000 dungeons, doesn't matter. If you can get all this experience unlocked alternate ways aside from doing the content, then there's no reason for us to do the content. They're trying to push us to do the content.
And maybe that's the only thing that works for me. Maybe I'm a type of player who doesn't have that ability to be able to participate in that content. You don't have to reward me greatly, but just some small progression to break down the walls between these attractions.
Unfortunately, the game cannot cater to little factors such as that. I mean, look, it's going to be sounding really mean of me to say, but let's say, for example, I am busy as heck. I'm busy as freaking heck, pardon my French, on VR chat, and I'm busy making all the content. I generally don't have the time to get on Final Fantasy XIV in order to make the Savage, in order to make, allocate the time for Eureka Pagos and stuff. And I want Square to give me a way of alternatively making progress without actually doing the content. It just doesn't work like that. Unfortunately, the game is not built around people's schedules or catering to people's inability to participate in the content. Unfortunately, that's the matter of fact. It's not built that way. That's not by game design. I'd rather not do Pagos either, but the game needs me to run Pagos in order to work towards a relic weapon. That's just by design. They need people to do it because they're trying to push it towards it. And I may like Pagos, I may dislike Pagos, but at the end of the day, they put out the content and hoping to see if it captures the biggest net. And if it doesn't catch me in that net, then unfortunately, I'm the denominator that they can be accounting for.
Eureka feeds into the gear progression. Heaven on High feeds into the gear progression. Dungeons feed into the gear progression, but they all don't feed into one another. And I think that ultimately is a core issue. Now, I want to see more things expand with progression, but we're going to get into that in other videos because I've been working on ideas of ways that the system could progress in meaningful and interesting ways that aren't game-breaking or require a lot of time and investment. And as a quick preview, just give progression systems that have no impact on battle. Reduce sprint cooldown, reduce teleport cost per aetheryte, per every level that you gain maybe. I don't know, that's just one simple idea. I think this game could be great and should be great.
And I agree with you, Brian. I think this game could be great and should be great. And in some sense, it is great. It's actually a really good game. It made me leave World of Warcraft. I know I mentioned before that I'm currently playing a little bit of World of Warcraft, but once patch 4.4 is out and I'm going into the Savage, going into the Trial, farming that, going into the Canals, I'm probably going to forget about World of Warcraft entirely. Final Fantasy XIV is my main game. I love Final Fantasy XIV. And aside from VR chat, Final Fantasy XIV will always be the main game for me. I love this game. I love the people that I met on this game. I love my free company. I love the community of Final Fantasy XIV. It is incredible and it's awesome. And my only thing, Brian, is I feel like you and I and many other people are experiencing the burnout because there's not much going on or not much deviation happening. There's deviation happening with Eureka, the new way to grind relics. It's a major deviation compared to A Realm Reborn and Heavensward. Maybe some parts of it is fun, some parts of it is not, but they're experimenting, they're deviating, we're seeing things happen. Going away from deviation of one tank, one healer, one DPS for every expansion, that's also good deviation. Even though there wasn't much of a deviation, they just kind of added the tank, healer, DPS, and we just assumed they're going to add another tank, healer, DPS because we've just followed the pattern, we've followed the dots. But in the original claim about whether Final Fantasy XIV is dying or not, I don't think it's dying. I do not. I genuinely feel like you and I, Brian, are currently having a burnout, and other people are having a burnout. It's going to get picked up again in 4.4. And even if then you feel like you're not inspired to go back into Final Fantasy XIV, maybe wait a couple patches. Go check out Destiny's new expansion or new DLC. Check out other MMOs. Maybe try World of Warcraft. Maybe you will like it. Maybe you'll be like, hey, this BFA expansion is actually not that bad. It's actually kind of fun. Go back into games that you've played before. Maybe finish up Octopath Traveler. Whatever it is that you got going on right now that you were putting off on the side to do later, you can go do it right now and check it out. Because look, if we play the same thing over and over, if we do the same thing monotonously on and on and on and on, we eventually all receive burnout and get burnt out by the things that we are doing. Sometimes I get burned out by VR chat if I'm constantly on it streaming it. I need breaks to go do something else, to get creative, to do something unique and, simple, not simple, but maybe something like work on a project like this video response. This is my very first video response that I've ever done of this scale and caliber. And I'm glad I was able to do it because this was an interesting process of learning how to edit these videos together and be able to make a response to somebody that I look up to as a content creator and as a Final Fantasy XIV player that I feel like we both are in the same boat together. Brian, I genuinely feel like we're both burnt out and we're just waiting for a new breath of fresh air. For me, new breath of fresh air was exploring other games, getting into VR chat, focusing more on my second channel. For you, the world is your oyster. You got a bunch of games you can go explore. I know you had some, thoughts on Destiny, but maybe give it another go. Maybe check it out, do a review on it, see if it's any worth it. I know, feel like Destiny 2 kind of burnt you out and stuff, and it's perfectly fine. Maybe try new pastures. Maybe give a try to World of Warcraft BFA for a month. See if you like it. Maybe we can play together. That'd be kind of cool, possibly, perhaps. And anyway, I appreciate your video. I think your video offered up some decent points, but I wish you would have gotten a little bit on depth. Like I said, I'm not in the business of grilling people. I don't want to grill you. I don't want to grill anybody. It's just I wanted to make a response to also criticize some things that I would like to see in Final Fantasy XIV be created. And maybe have a little bit more in-depth stuff. But that's about it. I'm played devil's advocate in some aspects in some places, but also defended your points as well and agree with your points. And yeah, I feel like I've been pretty fair. Nevertheless, I hope this video doesn't, ruin any sort of, burning your bridges or anything. Please understand that I'm doing it for, not for, mean-spirited. I'm trying to be good about it. Nevertheless, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed the response. This is my response to Brian from Word to Game on if Final Fantasy XIV is dying. Definite answer at the end is no. You just having kind of a slow patch cycle, and it's going to get picked up in 4.4. Nevertheless, hope you enjoyed. I need to take a break. My name is Tamriel. Like, subscribe, and as always, have a great day, and I'll see you all next video or whatever I make. I can't even speak properly. I'm slurring. Bye.